At 3:06 a.m., something hit my plane that left no dent. The corn below was whispering words in a language I'd never heard. There's a red barn I was told never to fly over, but last night, I did. And now the sky's not the only thing watching me. The first time I saw the list of rules taped to the dusty instrument panel of the crop duster, I thought it was a joke, maybe some hazing ritual for new pilots. Handwritten in red ink on yellowing paper, curling at the corners, the rules didn't look like they belonged in any official manual. Hell, they barely made sense. But Hank, the grizzled old man who ran the airstrip, wasn't the type to joke. When he handed me the keys to the ancient Belanca AG truck, he gave me a long, hollow look and said only, "Follow the rules." All of them, especially number 3. I laughed nervously, expecting more explanation, but he just turned and walked off toward the rusted hangar without another word. That was the beginning. Rule 1. Never start the engine before 4:44 a.m. Rule 2. If the Scarecrow in the north field turns its head, abort the mission. Rule 3. Never fly over the red barn after midnight. Rule 4. Don't look at the crop circles for longer than 5 seconds. Rule 5. If you see lights moving in the corn, ignore them. Simple enough, I thought. The morning air was thick with dew and the smell of soil when I took my first flight. The propeller groaned as the engine came to life, coughing and wheezing like it hadn't flown in months. Maybe it hadn't. I guided the crop duster down the narrow strip of asphalt that passed for a runway and lifted off into a sky painted in orange and pink. It was almost beautiful. Almost. Flying low over endless miles of farmland was hypnotic. The golden corn shimmered under the sun like waves of an inland sea. But after my third pass over the south fields, something odd happened. The Scarecrow, the one in the north field, was facing the wrong way. I didn't fly over it. I was nowhere near it. It had been facing west when I took off. Now it was facing me, even though I hadn't even gone near that side yet. The winds couldn't have done that. Neither could animals. I made a mental note and told myself it was a prank. I radioed Hank. Silence. Static crackled in my headset. Return to base, a voice said, but it wasn't Hank's. It was deeper, rasping, with a strange echo behind it. I checked my frequency. It was correct. Then the static vanished, back on the ground. Hank was waiting with a thermos of coffee and a blank look. I tried to tell him what I'd heard, what I saw, but he cut me off with a slow shake of his head. "You didn't look at the circles, did you?" he asked quietly. "No," I said, confused. "What circles?" "Good." He said nothing more. That night, unable to sleep, I returned to the hangar. Curiosity was gnawing at me. What was with that red barn? Why not fly over it? I opened an old aviation map I'd found in the office. The red barn was there, in the northeast quadrant of Field 12. Isolated. Not near any crop lines or regular flight paths. IT called to me. I waited until 12:01 a.m., fueled the duster in the dark, and took off. The wind was dead still, and the moon cast a ghostly light over the countryside. The red barn came into view, looking ordinary, until I crossed directly above it. Everything changed. The air pressure dropped instantly. The plane dipped like something had yanked it down. I pulled up hard. My instruments spun wildly. The altimeter reversed. The engine sputtered, coughed, and moaned. Yes, moaned, like it was alive and in pain. Then came the screaming. Not through the radio. Not in the engine. Not outside. Inside the cockpit. Dozens of voices. Men, women, children, screaming, chanting, whispering all at once. A flood of sounds like a chorus of lost souls trapped in the fuselage. "You shouldn't be here," one voice growled. And then, silence. The engine restarted itself. The instruments returned to normal. The barn disappeared behind me like it was never there. I landed safely, heart pounding, shirt soaked with sweat. I stumbled out of the plane and collapsed to my knees on the tarmac. Hank didn't say anything. He just handed me a new sheet of rules, this one in black ink, and with one terrifying new addition. Rule 6. If you break Rule 3, you have 6 days to fix what you've disturbed, or you'll never leave the sky again. I looked up. The stars above flickered. No moved, just slightly, like blinking eyes. Watching, something had woken up in that barn. Something old, and it knew my name. Asterisk, I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the red barn from above, its roof pulsing like it was breathing, the shadows around it writhing in impossible shapes. And beneath it, something ancient stirred. Not an animal, not human, something else entirely. The next morning, the land looked the same, but I stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror in the hangar's bathroom. My eyes were bloodshot, my face pale, but it wasn't just exhaustion. There was something behind my eyes now, like a haze or a distant static I couldn't blink away. When I turned away, I thought I saw my reflection linger just a second too long. The Scarecrow was now facing the hangar that I told myself I was imagining it. But I wasn't. I walked up to it, through the wet stalks of corn, every step accompanied by a rustle that didn't always match my movement. I stood in front of the Scarecrow, and for a moment, just one awful moment, it grinned. Not a twitch of fabric or a trick of the wind. The damn thing pulled its straw lips back and grinned. I stumbled back, heart pounding, but it was motionless. Again, arms outstretched, head tilted like it always was. I sprinted back to the hangar. Hank wasn't there. Instead, a tall man in a black flight jacket stood near the fuel tanks. His back was to me, and he didn't turn when I called out. He just lit a cigarette, exhaled a curl of smoke into the wind, and said in a voice that sent a chill down my spine, "You woke it up." I froze. "Excuse me. You broke Rule 3, he said flatly. "Most of us never get to even see the Red Barn. You went over it. Who are you?" He turned slowly. His face was blurred, like a smudge on a photo or a digital artifact. My eyes couldn't focus on him, like my brain refused to acknowledge his full existence. "I used to fly for Hank, too," he said, "until I didn't." With that, he vanished in a wind. No footsteps, just gone. The next 6 days passed in a surreal fog of fear and confusion. Each day brought a new horror. Subtle at first, then undeniable. Day 1, the crows stopped flying. Dozens gathered on the roof of the hangar, completely still. Not a sound, just watching. Day 2, my co-pilot's seatbelt snapped itself into place mid-flight, tightening, even though no one sat there. Day 3, my altimeter began ticking backwards during each run, even though I was flying straight. Day 4, I looked down at the cornfields and saw myself, standing in the corn, watching the plane, smiling. Day 5, a voicemail on my phone. My voice, screaming. And now it was day 6, the final day to fix what I disturbed. But no one had told me what that meant. So I went back to Hank. I found him sitting on the porch of his weathered farmhouse, just past the tree line, shotgun in. His lap, eyes bloodshot like mine. "You're still here," he muttered. "What do I do, Hank?" I begged. "Tell me how to fix this." He didn't speak for a while. Then he reached into his coat and handed me a small object. A rusted key, with a red ribbon tied around it. "Field 12, he said. "Ground level, not from the air." I drove there in a battered pickup, the skies darkening above me despite it being noon. Storm clouds churned unnaturally fast. Static crackled on the radio, even though it was turned off. The red barn stood in the center of the field, untouched by time, like something out of a photograph from the 1920s. Its paint was fresh, its windows clean, its doors slightly open, waiting. I walked inside. What I found was not a barn. It was bigger on the inside. A cavern of endless wooden beams and suspended walkways. It stretched far beyond the limits of any physical structure. Machinery clanked. In the distance, whispering echoed through the rafters, and on the floor, etched into the wood, was a massive symbol I didn't recognize. A circle of interlocking triangles, woven with runes that pulsed faintly red. The voices came again, louder now. All around me. "You brought it back. You must offer balance. Only then can you land." A figure stepped from the shadows. It was the same man in the flight jacket. But this time, I could see his face. It was mine. "Make the offering," he whispered, "or you'll fly forever, until the sky eats you whole." Behind him, a panel slid open in the floor, revealing a pit of darkness that shimmered like oil. It wasn't just dark. It was alive. I knew what I had to do. I pulled out the red ribbon key and walked toward the edge. I didn't know what I was sacrificing. Only that if I didn't, I'd never be able to land again. They say ghosts walk the earth, but what if one flies above it, trapped in endless sky? Last night, I saw my own crop duster hovering with no one inside. And now it's calling me to the cockpit. I stood at the edge of the pit, key in hand. staring into that endless, roiling blackness below the red barn's floor. It shimmered like the surface of an oil slick, but darker, deeper, like it led somewhere, not just down. I didn't know what I was offering. I didn't know what it wanted, but my gut told me this wasn't a choice. It was a test. One I had already failed. The whispering swelled. The warped version of me, the pilot doppelganger, nodded toward the pit. "Time's up," he rasped, and then stepped backward into the dark. Not fell, not leapt. He was taken. The barn vanished. I was suddenly standing in the field again, under a red sky, my boots sinking slightly into the soft black earth. The barn was gone. Not burned, not demolished, just gone. The field was dead silent. Not a bird. In the air, not a breath of wind. Only the ticking of my watch. It had stopped. 6:06 a.m. The engine of my crop duster was already running when I returned to the hangar. That's when I knew something was horribly, horribly wrong. I hadn't touched the keys. The throttle had been cold and untouched when I left. Yet there it was, blades spinning slow and lazy, tail rudder twitching like a lizard's, the plane waiting for me. I wanted to run. My legs wouldn't move. From the shadows of the hangar, Hank emerged. But it wasn't Hank. Not anymore. His eyes were milk white. His mouth moved, but the voice was not his. "You've started the cycle." "What cycle?" I shouted. "The one they used to feed." Then he collapsed, mouth foaming, and didn't get up. That's when I heard it. The faint sound of a plane engine in the sky. But not mine. I stepped outside. The sound grew louder. Still, nothing in the sky. No dust trails. No shape. Just the sound. Then I saw it. Over the south fields, flying low, was a second crop duster. Same model. Same faded yellow paint. But this one had no pilot, and it was flying upside down. The rules came flooding back. Rule 7, added by someone in scratchy handwriting: if you hear your plane before you see it, run. It's not yours. It's looking for a pilot. I turned to run, but the earth beneath my feet liquefied for a split second and pulled me down to my knees. Static surged through my ears like screaming metal. The ghost plane flew directly overhead, casting a shadow that didn't match its shape. In its shadow, I saw rows of watching eyes, rows of teeth along the fuselage. Its cockpit turned to face me. That's not a metaphor. The cockpit rotated, and the plane smiled. I didn't fly that day, but someone flew as me. The next morning, I woke in bed in my apartment, miles away. It made no sense. I hadn't driven. My truck was still at the airstrip. I was wearing my flight jacket, but it was soaked in red liquid, not blood, not quite oil. Something in between. I checked my phone. New voicemail. I played it. "Hey, it's Hank." Or, the version of him that's left. "You didn't finish the offering. You still have one chance. But you need to listen carefully. The others, the pilots before you, they're still up there. Stuck. Flying the same loop every night. You broke the sky's contract. And now you owe it something in return. You need to fly at midnight, but not alone. Bring the Scarecrow with you." The message ended. My window blinds began to shake. No wind. Just a presence. I looked outside, and there it was again. The ghost plane, hovering just above the trees, waiting. Midnight. I returned to the hangar with the Scarecrow slung over my shoulder. Like a corpse. I don't know what came over me, why I followed Hank's voice. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was instinct. Or maybe something deeper had already burrowed inside my mind. The Scarecrow was heavier than it should have been. Its straw-stuffed head rolled slightly in my direction, like it was watching. I strapped it into the co-pilot seat. As soon as I did, the dashboard lights lit up. Every gauge flickered. The radio turned itself on. A new voice crackled through. "Altitude locked. Passenger identified. Commence return." Return to where? I didn't have to ask. As I lifted off into the night sky, the world below fell away, in a blur of red and gold. The stars above bent unnaturally. I passed through clouds that bled, and then I wasn't over the Midwest anymore. I was over something else. A mirror sky. Beneath me, a reflection of myself flew in reverse. I in the co-pilot seat. The Scarecrow turned its head to face me. Its stitched mouth unzipped, revealing a second mouth inside, a human one. "You stole 6 minutes from the sky," it whispered in a raspy voice. "Now give them back." One by one, the plane lurched forward. Each minute, the world around me changed. Minute 1, the cornfields below blinked. Minute 2, I saw a row of pilots, hands raised in surrender, floating above their own aircraft. Minute 3. Static drowned the engine, and I saw my childhood home, burning in the clouds. Minute 4. I heard my mother calling my name, though she died 10 years ago. Minute 5. My instruments showed we were flying into the soil. Minute 6. The scarecrow screamed that I blacked out. When I woke, I was standing on the wing of my crop duster, which was hovering midair, unmoving. Below me, the ground opened like a maw. The scarecrow was gone. The ghost plane hovered next to mine. No one in it. Just the cockpit glass, reflecting my face that it flew into me. Not toward me. Into me. And I was no longer a man that I was a pilot. Forever. The sky doesn't forget its debtors. Each turn I make now echoes louder than the last. Last night, I traced the same path I always do, and the land beneath me changed. Now there's a new town below me, and it isn't on any map. There's a moment, right before you wake up, where the world feels still, neutral, safe. I didn't get that moment that I woke screaming that my breath came in ragged gasps. My sheets were soaked, my fingernails blackened, my feet covered in what looked like ash. But I wasn't in bed, that I was in the cockpit mid-flight. The sun was just peeking over the horizon, bathing the cornfields in warm light, but the warmth didn't reach me. Because as I looked down, I realized something was deeply wrong. This wasn't my farm. This wasn't anyone's farm. The corn grew in spiral patterns. The tractors in the fields moved on their own. The scarecrows were in motion, patrolling, almost military-like, dragging sickles behind them, their shadows moving opposite their bodies. Then I saw it. A small town at the edge of the field that had never been there before. Rows of houses, all painted a pale, sickly white. Windows covered with black plastic. No signs of life, except one figure standing dead center in the intersection. A woman, looking up at me, smiling. The crop duster began to descend on its own. I pulled the yoke hard. No response. The altimeter spun into negative numbers. The radio crackled. You broke Rule 8. You retraced your path. You invited the echo. I didn't know Rule 8. That wasn't on the list until I looked at my left wrist. Carved into my skin, freshly bleeding, were the words, Rule 8. Never fly the same route twice. I passed through the cloud cover, and the sky flipped. No, not flipped, reversed. The ground became the sky the earth. And I was flying upside down without changing altitude. The town below was now above me, floating like an island in an inverted ocean. Roads twisted like veins. Trees grew from rooftops. And in the sky, where the town shouldn't be, bells began to ring. Then the people came, hundreds of them, walking down from the sky town toward me, upside down, as if gravity no longer applied. And all of them had my face, everyone. Eyes gouged, mouths sewn shut. Marching toward my plane. I screamed, yanking every lever, spinning the dials. The plane didn't respond. Then I noticed the yoke was no longer connected to anything. It had detached completely from the controls. I was flying blind, and I wasn't alone in the cockpit anymore. The seat beside me was filled. The scarecrow was back, except now it wore my flight jacket, and my voice came from its mouth. The echo has begun. You'll fly in circles until the loop is complete. Unless what? I shouted. Unless you trade your place. It pointed out the window. I looked and saw another pilot, another crop duster, caught in an identical spiral, but it wasn't a ghost this time. It was a man, alive, real, flying the path I had flown yesterday, tracing my original route. The scarecrow turned its stitched eyes toward me. Him. Replace him. Give him to the loop. I froze. The implication was clear. I could escape, but only if someone else took my place. I hesitated, and that hesitation summoned them. The Watchers. They came from the clouds, colossal, multi-winged things made of storm and bone and glass. Their heads were like church bells, ringing thunder each time they turned. And they hated delays. My cockpit began to frost over. My breath came in puffs. The scarecrow leaned closer. Its human mouth, deep inside the straw, whispered, choose or be chosen. I made my decision. I banked the crop duster hard right, breaking from the spiral, engine screaming. I descended on the other pilot, heart pounding. His eyes widened as he saw me. I could read his lips. What the hell? He didn't know. He hadn't. seen the rules. He hadn't broken them yet, but I needed out that I needed to live that I collided with his wing, spinning both of us into a death spiral. The sky screamed around me, and then darkness that I woke up in a hospital bed. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Nurses moved in slow motion. My head was bandaged. My ribs broken. They said I was found in a field. My plane had crashed. Total wreck. The other pilot survived too, but his mind was gone. Just sat there in the hospital staring at the ceiling, muttering the same phrase. Don't retrace. Don't retrace. Don't retrace. I got discharged 3 days later, but something followed me home that I still hear the crop duster engine outside my apartment some nights, hovering just out of sight. Sometimes it knocks on my window. Sometimes. I answer, but I haven't flown since. Not yet, because I know what comes next. The sky is hungry, and I'm still on its menu. The sky whispered my name last night, and I almost answered. I've broken the rules, bent the loop, and taken someone else's place. But this morning, I woke up in the cockpit again, without starting the plane. And now the sky is asking me what I fear most, that I should be dead. Twice over. Once from the crash, and once from the thing that came after it. But somehow, I survived. Or maybe I didn't. Because even though I was back in my apartment, bandaged, stitched, shaken, I never left the sky. Not really. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the propeller spin. Every night, at exactly 3:33 a.m., I hear footsteps in my hallway. Barefoot, slow and wet. Every morning, my boots are caked in black dirt, and my hands smell of fuel I didn't touch. The rules didn't stop applying just because I landed, because I never really landed, and I think the sky knows. Last night, I broke the final rule, but not on purpose. It started when I found a new note slipped under my apartment door. No return address. Just one sentence written in red ink that bled through the paper. Rule 9. When the sky asks you a question, don't answer. That would have been fine. Except an hour later, the sky did ask me a question. It was 4:01 a.m. I was staring blankly out my window, unable to sleep. Fog drifted low across the street like spilled milk. And from the clouds above came a voice, not loud, not booming, but intimate. Like someone whispering into my ear from behind. It asked me, "Are you afraid of falling? Or of what waits when you land?" I almost answered. My mouth opened, but something inside me stopped it. Maybe instinct. Maybe a thread of the man I used to be. Maybe a part of the plane itself still inside me. I didn't respond. And the sky growled. A rumble shook the world. Car alarms blared. Dogs wailed. And from the center of the storm, the red barn returned, floating, silent. Visible now from my apartment window, despite being 60 miles from the nearest farm. It hovered above the neighborhood like a judgment. And then I heard the engine. Not my engine. The engine. The one that flies without fuel. The one that hunts its pilots. It was back. I ran. Out into the parking lot. Into the fog. The barn pulsed red overhead like a warning light. My breath came in bursts. The air smelled of ozone and old rot. I didn't know where I was going, but my body did. Back to the airstrip. Back to the crop duster. Back to the truth. Because I hadn't finished the loop. I had only paused it. The final rule was never written. Only spoken. By the Scarecrow that he was already waiting. When I reached the hangar, standing perfectly upright, hat gone, face pale, eyes open. Inside his mouth was a KEY.MYKEY.TO, the plane that he didn't move. Just let the key fall to the ground. I picked it up, hands trembling, and walked to the Belanca AG truck. Its hull now covered in faint, shifting sigils. Every bolt, every panel was moving slightly, like it was breathing again, and inside myself. Or at least a version of me. Skin waxy, eyes rolled back, already strapped in. But I looked peaceful. I pulled him from the seat and climbed in. The cockpit welcomed me like an old lover. The dash lit up. Final flight initiated, the speakers said. Destination, judgment. The plane lifted itself. I didn't touch the controls, didn't need to. We rose through the clouds, higher than crop dusters are meant to fly. Past the weather, past the stars, into a sky made of memory. Around me floated pieces of every rule I'd broken. The red barn, dripping. The spiral fields. My ghost reflection. The empty cockpit, still waiting. The pilot I sacrificed, now smiling with a stitched face. And then, the sky asked again, "Are you afraid of falling? or what waits when you land? This time I answered, I'm not afraid anymore. The plane vanished, the world inverted, and I was falling, not through air, but through time. Each second flashed memories. My first flight, my first mistake, my first rule broken. The people I saw. The man I became. The man I could have been. Then, I was back in the cockpit. But this time, everything was still, the engine quiet, the sky black, and sitting across from me was every version of myself. Every echo that ever tried to cheat the rules. Some were bloody. Some burned. .1 was still screaming. And they all turned to me and said, in unison, you passed. I landed the plane. Gently, softly. The soil welcomed me like a bed. Hank was waiting at the airstrip, but this Hank was young, healthy, smiling. You made it, he said. Not many do. What happens now? I asked. He pointed up at the stars. They'll write new rules. You'll enforce them. What? You're the new Scarecrow, son. Every sky needs a guardian. And then he handed me a black book. On the cover, engraved in silver, were the words, the rules for those who fly. I opened it. The first page was blank, waiting for me to write. The next rule. Final rule. If you survive the sky, you must teach others how to fly through it. But remember, no one escapes forever. Not even you.